1. Last Sunday, I was putting together a new dresser I had bought in the rear bedroom of my apartment. The bedroom door was open and I could see down the main hallway into the living room, where my fiancé was standing with the 2 kids while they were playing. This is about 7:30 p.m. A knock comes to the door. My 6-year-old son runs to the door and opens it. Even though he knows he's not supposed to, we're working on this. He was coming down from his birthday party excitement and just went for it, probably thinking someone else was stopping by for his party, even though it was long over. A woman is at the door. I recognize her as an upstairs neighbor from the other side of the building. She says she needs help and walks straight into the apartment. She began frantically talking nonsense, saying she was locked out of the building. She is in the building. Saying she can get into her apartment but couldn't get into the building, then in the same breath saying she can't get into her apartment. She appears extremely disoriented and keeps saying she is just so exhausted or really tired over and over again. She appears very out of it, not balancing very well. Speech pattern is sloppy, appears to be in some sort of light daze. To me, immediately, she appeared to be having some sort of episode. As soon as I stepped foot near her, I could tell something fishy was going on. She continued to talk in circles and not make any sense, saying her parents are going to be so worried if she didn't check in with them. She lives alone. She begins repeatedly asking us to call numbers for her. Her phone is in her hand, on the video record setting, but I can see it is not recording. She is rolling something in her pocket over and over. It appears to be a screwdriver. As she is telling my fiancé numbers to dial, she cannot come up with the numbers. Every phone number she gave us to call for help was multiple digits short. They were not phone numbers. Then when I said that's not enough numbers to make a phone number, she would switch to a different phone number and then stop halfway through saying it. This happened about 7 or 8 times, and finally I had enough. She kept saying her phone wasn't working, so I had to let her try to use my phone. But she just kept standing there, holding it, not using it, just holding onto it, continually talking nonsense. I'm thoroughly uncomfortable at this point, and very upset that this woman has entered my apartment without invitation and is acting this way around my children. I tell my fiancé to take the kids to the back of the house and try to coax the woman out, saying, "Let's go check out your apartment, come with me, we'll see if it's open." I try to lead her out of my apartment, but she says she's so exhausted and needs to sit down, and proceeds to just sit down in my living room couch. I'm not thrilled with this. In fact, I'm livid, but I keep my cool and realize I'm dealing with crazy. My fiancé flanks her from the back, so she cannot get further into the apartment and near the children again. I continue trying to coax her out, about 5 minutes of trying to convince her to leave our apartment and come with me to check hers out. She finally walks ever so slowly out of our basement apartment. I'm a stairway ahead of the woman already, telling her to follow me up to her apartment. On the way to hers, she attempts to get into 2 others that are not hers. I tell her each time that's not hers. When I arrive at her apartment, the door is wide open. She has not caught up with me yet, so I take a quick glance inside the door. The couch cushions are thrown everywhere, and the living room is looking torn up and turned upside down. She arrives behind me and tries again to get into another neighbor's apartment across the hall from hers. I tell her that's not hers, but hers is here and is wide open. Finally, I get her to go inside. When she does, she apologizes to me, saying, "I'm sorry this is how we had to meet. I'm just so exhausted." I say it's okay and quickly head back downstairs to my place. I have such an uneasy feeling that I decided to call the cops and let them know that some woman who I have never spoken to before showed up at my door asking for help and acting disoriented. They say they will send someone to check on her. An hour later, police arrive and knock on her door. No answer. They leave. 4:15 a.m. rolls around. My 6-year-old son and 1-year-old daughter have been asleep through the night, as have myself and my fiancé. I get up to use the bathroom. As I'm using the bathroom, I hear a light knock on the apartment door. So light, I actually second-guess if I heard it. I call out to my fiancé to ask her if she heard a knock at the door too. She says she didn't hear it. We both head towards the living room together just to see if we hear anything. No sooner do we step foot in the living room when we hear scratching at our front door. The unmistakable sound of someone clawing at your door is not something I wish for anyone to hear in the middle of the night. It is truly horrifying. I tell my fiancée to be with the kids and make sure they're okay. I open the door to find the woman from earlier standing at the top of the flight of stairs in front of my apartment, just looking down, staring at the door. It's bloody terrifying. So I told her no way are we doing this, proceeded to call her a crazy bitch and tell her to get away from my apartment and stay away from my family. I also told her I'm calling the cops right now. She scurries away out of sight, presumably back to her apartment. I immediately call the police. They show up and ask her all of the mental health questions, which she apparently answered adequately, so they said there's nothing they can do. This woman was clearly in some sort of state and is now harassing me and my family and disturbing our peace and the safety of my children. They told her to stay away from us, and I haven't seen her in a week since then, but I can't help but continue to think about it. Ever since the first time she entered the apartment acting crazy, I have had this pit in my stomach, and this uneasy feeling that whatever this is not over. I still do not know what it is that was going on, and it makes me uneasy. I do not know what to make of it. Our other neighbor, who we are cool with, said that her doorknob was being jiggled by someone in the middle of the night. Putting two and two together, I know it was this crazy woman. It's got me sick. The complex sent her a warning that this behavior is unacceptable, but I really don't know what to do or how to feel. My first instinct is to respond with anger and physically defend myself and my family. Input is welcome and appreciated. 2. I have lived in this same apartment complex for several years. I have never had any issues with neighbors until now, so I'm not sure if this is even anything to be concerned about. For a little background, it started with a couple moving in next door. Their first week, they got into a serious fight that resulted in the girlfriend locking the boyfriend outside. This resulted in him pounding on the door yelling. This has happened multiple times since. In addition, they have a dog that they do not clean up behind per community policy, and that barks quite a bit. One early morning, about 1 week after they moved in, I heard someone trying to open my door while I was awake in bed, waiting on my alarm to go off. That afternoon, the girlfriend asked me if I'd seen her daughter, and I said no. She mumbled something about the daughter mistaking my door for hers. Just to note, the daughter is a young child and doesn't live there, and only seems to visit her mom on occasion. It would have been 4 a.m. in the middle of the week when this occurred. Seems unlikely a small child would be out by themselves at that time in the morning on a school day, in a place where she doesn't live. I have not wanted to report them, because I also have a dog and know he barks on occasion. I understand that this and occasional fights come with the territory when you live in apartments. Now here is a series of events that I am concerned about that I would like an opinion on. A new tenant on the other side of them has moved to a different unit about 2 months after they moved in. I do not know if it's related, but that unit was remodeling after a long-term renter moved out, not long before all this. So I find the possibility of maintenance issues low. The boyfriend, who had been quite polite and neighborly thus far, is now suddenly acting irritated and afraid of my dog any time we cross paths, while I'm taking my dog on walks. About a month ago, my dog woke me up at 2 a.m, barking, but barking like he knew something was wrong. Not like he heard something in the distance. I think dog owners will know the difference that I'm talking about. After that, he has refused to stay by himself in the apartment. He howled being left alone for the next couple of days. I have cameras. After which, I put him in a doggy daycare if I have to go to the office. One morning, while we were leaving, I don't know how to even describe this, the girlfriend started howling. I'm assuming to mimic my dog. She'd make a howling noise and a human crying noise and vice versa, over and over again. This went on for a few minutes. Recently, the girlfriend called 911 and reported to them that she heard screaming and could smell smoke coming from my unit. I was home alone and there was obviously nothing going on. After she called 911, she came to my door while recording with her camera and told me what she heard and could smell. I told her that I had cooked earlier, but that nothing was going on. She pointed to my dog and said, "That's probably what I heard," and went back to her unit. Neither her nor the boyfriend work regular jobs any longer. She is home all day and leaves multiple times a day carrying a backpack, and returning a short while later. I'm sure you can guess what I think the new job is. My theory is this: I think that the neighbor that got moved to a new unit tattled on them for being noisy, and they're assuming it's me and are trying to get me kicked out. Am I crazy? What would you do? Or would you do anything at all? When you live with people in close quarters, the last thing you want to do is make waves. I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. Hellfreezer's note. The waves have already been made. You didn't make them, but nonetheless, there they are. So I suggest what you do is document every single thing they do that creeps you out, every noise they make. Record it if you can, make a note of it, and then report it to whoever deals with that. Because if 2 people have complained about them, there's more of a chance that they'll get kicked out. I wish you luck with it, and I hope you don't have to deal with them much longer. 3. Bit of a long one, but I have a mid-terraced property and the driveway is large, big enough to comfortably fit 2 cars. As is my neighbour's, who had hers block paved, but I'm yet to have mine done. Cost of living crisis and all that. There's no divide between the 2 driveways, but hers is hers and mine is mine, and it's clear whose is whose, etc. Anyway, as you step out my front door, I have a huge concrete step that drops down to the driveway, meaning if I parked my car straight up to the step, the tail end of my car overhangs the path, which I don't want to do, as it's used by pedestrians. So I park at an angle pointing closer to my house and the other neighbours, away from hers, so if you imagine standing facing out my front door, she is to my left, my car is right over to the right-hand side of my driveway, leaving a large, blank, unused portion of my driveway closer to hers, outside my front door. Bins are an issue when you're mid-terraced, no side access, so they have to stay out front. We have 2 brown bins and a black bin, which I keep up on the step against the house, because if I left it out in the open blank space of the driveway, they'd get blown over constantly by the wind. I thought about a bin store, but I feel it would look out of place as the driveway is on a slight slope, and it wouldn't sit flat. Anyway, recently my Ring doorbell was picked up. A lot of footage of her visiting family member just stood in my driveway and walking across my driveway. I really don't see why he keeps doing this, as she has a small car and a massive driveway with plenty of room, and like me, she parks at an angle over the other side of her drive, pointing towards her other neighbor too, so there's no need to come over to my side. But he does, and he does so all the time. It triggers my dogs a lot, one of which is a Doberman who, as you know, are very much protective of their people and property. But as good and well-trained as she is, it leaves her unsettled and constantly on high alert because she thinks someone is hovering about close to my front door. I'll also add that she has a heart condition and has already significantly shortened her life, so we don't need her getting stressed. I had a little informal chat about it with my neighbor in a roundabout way to emphasize people using my driveway as a thoroughfare bothers me without directly saying, "It's you." Because we do chat on occasions, and never had any issues, so I assumed she'd get the hint. I just didn't want to seem petty or make things awkward, because I don't like to upset anyone. However, since I've mentioned, it's got far worse, and I now feel like we're almost in this weird territorial I'll-do-what-I-want battle, as in the same conversation she asked me if my bins were staying where they were, against the house. I told her yes. They keep blowing over and the house acts as a windbreak, plus they're closer to the house for when I want to throw things out, etc. They're not infringing on her at all, but she seemed to have a problem with this for some reason. But obviously she can't tell me I can't put them there because it's my side, my drive, my bins. So fast forward to now. Since then, she has started parking her car right up to the boundary line closer to my drive, facing the house, which is her right. But having lived here for almost 10 years, she's never done that, unless she has a visitor. So it just seems odd that she would start doing it now. The problem with this being, when she opens her car door passenger side, it overhangs my side. Then she walks around my driveway to get her dog and stands there letting it sniff all over my driveway, dawdles for 10 minutes, and then goes in. She's also done this when she has visitors, and her visitors stand on my driveway with her chatting away with the dog looking like she wants to toilet on my driveway. And I'm just looking back at my Ring footage like, why? It's weird. She could do that on her own. It actually feels like a deliberate attempt now to annoy me. I thought maybe I was being petty. But then my husband asked what and why she was doing that, as he'd noticed it on camera too, and confirmed that it's not acceptable, so it kinda reaffirmed to me that it's not okay. If I were to walk over the road to one of my neighbours who has a fully fenced driveway with gate for access, and opened the gate and stood on their driveway with my dog and my friend having a chat, I'm sure they'd be asking me what on earth I was doing. So why does she think it's okay? I'm at a loss of what to do with it, and don't want to cause friction. The ideal solution would be a wall or fence to create a physical boundary, but not only can I not afford this right now, but my driveway is all concrete. So the concrete would need to be core drilled, dug into, which doesn't make for an easy job. Can anyone suggest what they could possibly use in the meantime for a boundary? And also, I just wanted general advice on how they'd approach this situation, because I shouldn't be letting something so ridiculous get to me. I think it's more the ignorance and overall, what you gonna do about it attitude that comes across, because I personally wouldn't do that myself, and I have respect for my neighbours and their things. She even went out and moved her car closer to my side again last night, knowing Storm Bert was on its way, which I also thought was odd because my bins could go over and land on her car. Alright, I understand the frustration. If you say anything to them, they'll just say they didn't realise. Now, ideally, obviously, as you said, get a wall, a fence. Brick wall would probably be fine for your current situation, but money's an option right now. Cost of living crisis, of course, I understand. Also, what you do with your bins is perfectly normal. I've got a little pensioner's house next to me. I've got a house technically identical to mine next to me. I'm in the middle of those two. I keep my bins out front as well. Perfectly fine. As you say, it's more convenient. As for your driveway, here's what you do. Go to Amazon or your local garden centre. Get a couple of planters, right? Just get the cheap plastic ones. It doesn't really matter what they're made out of. I mean, just kind of looking at Amazon right now, they have something called 2 black gross trough, 55 centimeters. Get a few of those, enough that they don't have to cover the entire area. There can be spaces in between them, but it would create a very obvious and definite barrier that people would have to deliberately walk past, and then you would have justification for saying something. Get those, stick some rocks in them to weigh them down so they don't get blown about by the winds, and then put some nice plants in them as well. It'll look pretty, it creates a barrier, and your neighbour can go screw themselves. 4. I live in a nice apartment building. I'm very happy with it here. People are quiet, keep to themselves, and don't ever have an issue with each other, for the most part. We have a 6-month-old son, but neighbours have told us we don't disturb anyone due to the thick walls and ceilings. So it's overall a pretty decent place. I've only had one issue, and it's so tedious and stupid, especially since I've been through way worse neighbours from hell situations. But this isn't even about someone who actually lives here. In my building, there are front parking spaces that are closest to the door. We live on the 2nd floor, which means lugging a baby carrier up a flight of stairs, which isn't fun, by the way. The girl in the apartment downstairs tends to park up there. We have zero issue with that, obviously. We try to park up there due to having a literal baby, but we've run into some issues recently, and it's become a genuine issue at this point. The girl downstairs has a friend. I have zero idea their relationship, but her car is always there, in spite of no parking sticker, and certainly not on her lease, because we are told it was just her who lives there by the landlords. Normally we would again have zero problem with this, except for the fact that there's 2 regular spaces and a handicap space. I'm sure you already know where this is going. She flat out refuses to park anywhere else. Her car is always there, and if it's not on the rare occasion she's not there, Then we take the spot because we're actual tenants. She has a license plate specific to her career, but she's always here, so I'm not quite sure how she actually procured a plate because she doesn't do anything. The field of work just so happens to be the one that my dad has a higher-up position in, so she likely knows my father, yet I've gotten no confirmation. It's to the point where if she has to park somewhere different, she will genuinely scout out the parking spot. For instance, my fiancé went to go to the grocery store yesterday, and not even 30 seconds after he pulled out, she exited and moved her car to the spot. She's also entered the driveway, parks temporarily in a spot, keeps her car on, and waits in her car. On a few occasions we were parked there and go somewhere else. She will literally wait for us to leave and take the spot. She's also horrible at parking. There's potential for another unmarked space that we've slid into a few times, but she's almost always over the line so nobody can park there. It's to the point where she will leave a little less than a car's gap from the other girl's car so we can't park. It feels intentional at this point. This may sound so petty and stupid because there are no other parking spots. It's not the end of the world. Carrying a 20-pound baby across a long driveway and up a flight of stairs is driving me nutso because it's completely preventable. People have tried to tow her. She just goes out and argues with them, leaves for an hour or two, and then comes back. I've reported her multiple times to no avail. She knows what she's doing, and it's so petty. It could still be lingering post-pregnancy hormones, but it's driving my fiancé nuts too. It's one thing if you are on the actual lease here and not staying with a friend, a girlfriend, or sibling. It's another thing if you don't legally live here, and yet still demand a good parking spot. If she got an actual lease, this wouldn't be as annoying to me. I would probably just brush it off like I did the first 2 months, thinking she actually legally lives here. Update. Someone tried to come tow her because we're currently having a snowstorm. She did what she always does and got into her car, yelled at him, and left. Apartment management sent out an email about non-tenants parking in the lot and said to report all findings. But that was also said last year by the same management company we rent from, different building. Some guy with a Subaru was doing similar things and never got consequences. I live in a college town, so the college kids love to park in parking lots they're not supposed to, which is not the case with the lady in this story, of course, but it sort of relates. So I don't have high hopes that anything will be done about it, which sucks, but c'est la vie. Thank you for listening. 5. The following is an update to story number 1 from Naughty Neighbours number 13. An update. Tonight I was casually and peacefully running my errands. Things were peaceful and content. As I was approaching my garage, I saw the neighbor from hell and his roommate standing in the road. Can you guess where? Standing inches away from my garage. Can you guess who didn't budge an inch as I tried to enter my garage? Both of them. They both stood directly in my way, but stepped about 1 foot away so I had enough room to enter. Who stares directly at a neighbor, dead center in their eyes, as they're casually entering the garage? Pure intimidation. There is something wrong with these two. The creepiest part? They both were standing waiting for me to exit my vehicle as I parked and waited for them to leave. Their opposite garage for me remains open as I write this. They both are just sitting there in the dark, waiting for me or something. My instincts are screaming not to talk to them. They are both sitting in total darkness, waiting. Occasionally I look out of my mirrors and I see them staring in my direction. My car and windows are jet black, but I see their silhouettes just facing my direction. Would you also consider this harassment? I am reaching out to my apartment manager, stating this is the final straw. It's time to transfer to another garage. This guy's peak insane. Imagine 2 dark zombie-like shadows shuffling back and forth in a dark garage. What better things do you put aside just to intimidate a neighbor who needs to park? I'm assuming they have to get bored at some point, but this is peak psychotic behavior. Finally, after almost 30 minutes, they got bored and left. But they were waiting, and it's clear to me they want a confrontation, and I am not interested. 4 hours and 30 minutes of hostage time. Unreal. Update. 26th of November. Well, if any of you are following this chaos, today the poop hit the turbine. Magically and mysteriously, said neighbor had purchased a GMC truck that he uses to park in front of his garage. Wouldn't you guess it? He uses his car as a crutch. Why park it deliberately in front of a garage that already houses 2 motorcycles? Innocently, I went to buy groceries, as today I am working from home. His truck was not in the way. My God, it's a good day. I don't have to deal with this child. I hopped in my EV racer and went off to buy groceries in the chilly rain. As I returned, Satan, the black truck, was staring back at me as I was happily hoping to enter my garage and peacefully transition my groceries to my apartment. But this time his minion, the neighbor from hell, was busy in his garage doing hobgoblin things that hobgoblins do. The truck deliberately was in my way. I finally spotted the fool and decided the time is now to tell him this needs to stop, and it's time to work together to allow each other to park properly. As I said, "Excuse me," he was hunched down and didn't even bother to look at me. "Can you move your truck, please? I have to get to work as I'm working from home." He looks at me and says, "I'm just as acceptable as parking here as you are there." And I immediately snapped back with, "Not if you're blocking me. The officer told you that already. We need to find an arrangement so I can park in my garage that I am paying for." With that, he toyed with me. "Should I move my truck? Do you want me to move my truck?" I didn't respond to this facetious behavior. "This has been going on for long enough, and I'm tired of these games," I said, and his response was, "Just so you know, I'm obligated to tell you to F yourself." At that point, I've said enough. I'm calling the authorities. As I did so, he moved his truck. Then he began berating me after moving the truck, instructing me, "Don't you want to move your car now? Hello?" I didn't look at him and stayed on with the authorities. At this point, he was very belligerent. 911 stated to call them again if he harassed me, to which I had to call again because he continued yelling at me through my closed car window. I was told to stay inside and lock the doors until 2 units arrived. Even management was alerted to his whereabouts. Management and the police involved. They took my statement and testimony of his despicable behavior. He suddenly turned from a white wannabe gangster to a humble little church mouse the moment the big players arrived. I kid you not. I wouldn't be surprised if he begged and pleaded like a coward while he was questioned. The officer who spoke with me was kind, had a righteous strength about him, but also felt compassion, mercy, and understanding. I gave my written statement to him, and we talked about how this all came to be, and that management will be the liaison between this dispute. But if physical violence or property damage was to occur, to call them immediately. After they went on their way, management spoke directly with me, and I mentioned I was interested in moving to a new building away from this demon. They immediately mentioned they would be accommodating, and that it will be taken care of. We parted our ways, and I took my heavy groceries in, and here I am therapeutically writing this down. Today the good guys won. It's fascinating how someone who thinks they're a hard man turns into a complete infant the moment they are surrounded by police, management, and a few maintenance personnel. After pondering all of this, I realized something. This guy has a silver tongue. He has a demonic personality where he acts like he's on your side. He will gather information from you for selfish purposes. And when he decides to torment his victims, he turns into a snarling demonic personage of hate, and is absolutely ugly when he can't get his way. This will help him realize that the world doesn't revolve purely around him, but it spins for all of us. I have never in my life encountered someone who was so unwilling by his own accord to move a vehicle. By now, if he were intelligent, he would place markers of the perfect distance where he should pull his truck up to allow for him to A. park in front of his garage, and B. give enough courtesy room for me not to be blocked from freely moving about. Thanks for listening this far. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Naughty Neighbours episode 21. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and share the video with friends and family. And do support me on my Patreon page, which is linked for you in the description. Even $1 helps. Okay. No other business today, so let's move along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, As we're coming up for the holiday period, do you like to stay at home, or do you like to get away from it all? If possible, of course, due to work commitments and such, when the Christmas or the holiday time comes. Let me know what you think in a comment below. Personally, I'm very much a homebody. I like to snuggle up on the sofa, make things nice and toasty with snacks. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And today's answer comes from Naughty Neighbours 19 and is about your favourite iteration of Sherlock Holmes. Today's answer comes from a elephant. When it comes to actual Sherlock Holmes, my absolute favourite is Jeremy Brett. He is just so delicious as Holmes, and I feel like he perfectly embodies the character. I adore his ability to do that quick smile thing he does. When it comes to coded characters, I'm not really sure. Both House and Monk are among my favourite shows, as others have mentioned, although I do enjoy the Sesame Street character, Sherlock Hemlock, based off of Basil Rathbone's portrayal. Thank you very much for your answer, A Elephant. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.